What's up, fam? Just Ramon here. Today, we're going to talk about, I guess, what's wrong and what's right in prison. I said, I know a perfect story that lets you know that something was wrong with the prison system. Now, the feds, the federal prison system, and the state prison system are two different systems. So I talked extensively about the state prison system, and I talked extensively about the federal prison system. But what people don't know is that federal system is highly segregated. It is very segregated. I mean, like across race and across religion and nationality, or like your origin, your whatever location you're in. But at any rate, so when I went to my first time that I got to Big Sandy, Kentucky, I got a. It was not a disciplinary transfer; it was an administrative transfer, and they sent me to this prison. And when I got there, they gave me my bunk, they gave me my bedroll, and they gave me my cell assignment and what bunk I was going to be on. So when I got there, I got to the block. The CO was like, I looked around, I saw the CO, he was in his office, and I could see where the cells were, so I just went to my cell. And when I got there, it was already two people in there, and both beds were full. So I backed up and I looked up at the cell, and I'm like, okay, and I'm looking at my paper to make sure I got the right cell. So I'm like, okay. So I go back down to the CO. I leave my bunk there, and I go back to the CO, and I was like, hey man, I said somebody's in that cell, and he was like, is there? And I was like, yeah. He says, all right, well, go find you somewhere to live. I said, what? He said, man, go find a cell. And I turned around and I'm looking and everybody looking at me. And I wish I had pictures of me. I had a full beard. I had a whole head full of hair. I had a reverse Mr. T going. I looked like a caveman. I didn't look nothing like this because I was fresh out of the hole. And everybody's looking at me. I'm looking at them. I'm in Kentucky. So I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a problem. So dude walks up to me. So I'm like, here we go. He's like, where you from, homie? I was like, I'm from Ohio. And he was like, yo, J Rock, it's one of your people, man. So here comes this dude, J Rock. He come looking me up and down. He's like, what's up, man? Where you from? I'm like, from Akron. He was like, okay, yeah. He said, you got your paperwork? I'm like, yeah, because you got to have paperwork showing that you haven't testified on anybody and you ain't got no sex case or anything like that. So I like, yeah, I got my paperwork. He was like, all right, bet. He was like, come on, man. And then from there, they kind of brought me in, and I knew right then and there that like I was like, dude, this is gonna be a whole issue because the police is just there. They ain't even like you go to a prison and they tell you to go find you somewhere to live. That was like I was like, oh, this is crazy. So yeah, that was the system in itself is flawed. We had a situation where there were five issues. All right. So we had five issues inside the prison. One was the poor quality of the food. The second was the the addressing of the medical treatment. Like we had a dentist that was torturing us. Like he literally was everybody went to go get a teeth cleaning. They came out with their gums bleeding and their mouth sore. And everybody was like, "What the heck?" And everybody was under the impression that he was doing it purposefully. The other one was movements. Like we would have timed movements, and our chow or our we call it chow, but we didn't have movements until they finished chow. Well, it was taking 2.5 to 3 hours to finish chow, and by the time they finished chow, we wouldn't have a movement in the evening. And so now we don't get to go to recreational or our programming, and we're stuck. The other one was they installed these X-ray, like not radio. What do you call it? Yeah, it was like a it's not a metal detector, it was an X-ray machine. Like you have at the airports, they installed one of these and coming out of the dining hall, and they wanted us to walk through them. And the Muslim population and some other religious populations don't like going through, or like I guess it was against their religion to go through radiation or anything like that, and they refused to do it, and they were locking these guys up and giving them tickets. And then the fifth issue was, uh, I forget what the fifth issue was, but it was 5 issues. It'll probably come to me, but there was 5 issues. It was the medical, the food, the movement. Um, the last one was the response to inmate request forms, or what we call kites. That's what it was. They were not answering kites. Like there's on the policy states that they're supposed to answer them within 7 days, and they just never. Sometimes they just never answered them at all. Just ignored you. So because they were like just disregarding our fundamental quote unquote rights, we as a group, the inmates all got together, and we decided that we were going to protest. And we were not going to riot. We're going to protest. So we decided that on a particular Saturday, which is a day that not everybody has to go to work. It's only people usually go to work on Saturday are kitchen workers, and some general population. So we had already been discussing among ourselves that this is what we're going to do. We're going to, when they open the doors on Saturday morning, we're just not coming out, because they usually open the doors and call breakfast. So when they open the doors in the morning and say, child, nobody came out of their cells. And we made sure that people that didn't have food had food, because we knew that what was getting ready to happen. Like once they realized that nobody was coming out of their cells, they knew that it was a problem, and they were going to lock us down, and they were going to start investigating. So that Saturday morning, they opened the doors, and nobody came out. And by the time, and it like once they opened the doors, and I say in about 15 minutes after that, they was locking us down, because nobody came out of the cells, and the COs knew something was wrong. And because usually some people come out and start doing their little regiment, their daily regiments and stuff, but nobody came out of their cells, and they knew something was up. And they locked us down, and they started interviewing, asking us what's going on. And we stated our complaints. We all had the same issues, and we all said we wanted these addressed. And we were locked down for 19 weeks. And when I say locked down, that means locked in your cell 24 hours. Like you're not coming out of your cell at all. The only time they let us out was to do interviews and to give us a shower it's supposed to be every other day, but it ended up being like in the first couple stages, it usually takes like you might get a shower every 3 to 5 days. So once everything settles down, maybe it usually takes about 2 weeks for everything to settle down. Then they'll start giving us showers like every other day or every 2 days. But they ended up, as I told you, like they didn't know what inmates were where and what cells. They ended up moving us to different blocks based on your job, whatever your job classification was. That's where they ended up moving you to. And they separated the prison, so we couldn't really communicate. They broke the prison up into 3 different prisons. Like they put this block only, we had 3 blocks on the prison yard. We had A, B, and C. Well, A and none of them ever wrecked with each other. They never ate the child with each other. They fed us all separately, so we couldn't get together anymore and do that. But there's ways around that, but they addressed our issues, and they made some changes, and it was better for it. But we had to fight for that, and then we had people on the outside, because now we're writing letters. We're not getting phone calls, so we got to write letters, and then every now and then they would let us. Like, no, they wouldn't. We couldn't even shoot emails. We couldn't. We had email system. We couldn't even get to the computer because we're on lockdown. So it was our communication was through letters. So yeah, it took us to the checks and balances part of it is that if we come together as a collective, they know that we hold more power than they do because we outnumber them like 5-1 or something. So yes, we can take over a prison, but can we keep it? Probably not. You know, but we can make a huge impact if we collectively stand together. And I know that because I've been involved in a protest in the state system, and I've been involved in a protest in the federal system, and it works. As far as security was going inside the blocks, like inside the blocks, because you have to understand, you got roughly 150 inmates, and you got one CO. So he's not really controlling anything. All he's doing is turning keys. That's what we call them, turnkeys, because all he's doing is unlocking and locking doors and answering radio calls and phone calls. Because if we decide that he can't be there, then he gonna go. But they pretty much, like, there was a CO that came through and he said, "Listen, man, let me do my job. Don't make me do my job." So as he says, "I want to go home. I'm just here to get 8 hours and go home, man. I'm trying to hit that, do my 8 and hit that gate." That was the saying, the 8 and the gate. So, but it was like that throughout the whole prison because we controlled who was where, and you know, nobody. It was just the whole system. It was the whole system because when the case managers need somebody, he'd call. He wouldn't even call. He'd call the CO, right? And the CO would call whoever he knows in the block and be like, "Hey, man, go get so and so. Tell them they got to go so and so," right? Because he knew that they wasn't in the cell that they were supposed to be in. And then they come through and they do like periodically they would do what they call like a book ticket. Well, and they would come through and say, "Okay, this is what cell you're assigned to." So they'll lock everybody down and they'll match our face with our IDs, right? And so whoever was out of place, they would switch them back to where they were supposed to be, and then they would leave. And when they leave, everybody would switch back to where they was. It was just insane. It was crazy. And so it was the prison itself, like the whole prison was like that. So I say this, I always say this. There's people that I met in prison that belong in prison, and I'm glad I met them in prison because I wouldn't want them out in society. But at the same time, we're human beings, man. And I don't know that in different countries they got different, how they treat their prisoners and whatnot. But the United States is a money pit. That's their money pit, like their nest egg is prisons. So you got to understand that it's not about rehabilitations and corrections. It's not about anything dealing with the inmates. Now, in the federal system, they have to be more structured because it's international, like it's worldwide. We got prisoners from different countries and different continents all over the world. So it's real, like, universal. But if they got these policies and procedures in place that are not being followed by the staff members, this is where it becomes a problem. Because on paper, everything is like, this is how it's supposed to be. This is going to be this way. They got these rights. And they give us, when you go to a prison, you go through an orientation process and they give you a prison handbook. Of each prison that you go to, they give you a handbook and it has the do's, the don'ts, the rights and responsibilities, and they'll tell you that this is a right, this is a privilege. There's a difference between the two. And it's my personal opinion that if you go to prison and when they give you that inmate handbook, read it, because those same rules that they give you and the governing you, they govern them too. So if you can't be in playing the game if you don't know the rules. If you don't know the rules, then they can do whatever they want to do to you. but I always read the rules and I read the policies and procedures. So that way, if something happened, I say, well, that's not right. And I can say, oh, yeah, see, right here, you said that you was going to do X, Y, Z, but you're doing A, B, C. That's not how it's supposed to be. And 9 times out of 10, they would address it if somebody like, but you have to know the rules. You're gonna play the game, baby. Know the rules. The policies of prisons are very dogmatic. There's little room for gray area, like because you got to understand that in prison we got nothing but time to figure out how to get around the rule or a policy. So they're pretty, and usually I will say this: every rule or policy or procedure that is listed in the manuals or the handbooks that they give you, it's because somebody did something and they're like, we got to address this, and so they keep addressing it, and they have revised policies and procedures that they do, but it's really hard to say like, okay, well, this says this, and find a gray area, because they pretty much know exactly why this rule was written, what the purpose of it, what the scope of it is, and that leaves little room for interpretation because it's pretty much clear. And if like, so they do have a rule. I forget, it's a infraction where it's like a potluck, I guess you could say, where they could say you did something that was maybe not in the policy, but it was wrong, right? And so they could charge you with that. It's a small infraction, but it's still an infraction. So they, I can give you an example. Um, I was in college in prison, and our professor gave us this essay that was talking about, it was written in 1976 by a feminist, and she was saying her whole argument was that I want a husband, right? No, she said, I take that back. She said, why I want a wife, because of, and then she went on to list all of the qualities that a wife does and all the rights and responsibilities that a wife had. And so she's talking about, like, I want to like bear children, I want to have great sex and make sure that my man is satisfied, I want to cook, and like all of these things that like all the gender roles assigned to a wife. And she was really being sarcastic about it, but she was we were learning about um, the roles of a wife, and learning what gender assignments is, gender roles. And so when she gave us that paper, I was engaged. I worked in the hospital at the prison, and our warden, not our warden, but the director of the Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections was encouraging the staff and inmates to get beyond the inmate police setup and actually talk to the people. She wanted us to engage. Now, she's not asking us to establish relationships. That's the problem. We can't establish relationships, but we can have a rapport and talk to one another and have engaging conversations. So I had been engaged with the nursing staff on different conversations, and I happened to give this essay to one of the nurses, and she read it. There's a paragraph in there that talks about how she wants to be pleased sexually and blah, blah, blah. But again, you got to remember the context of the letter. Well, I think she just glanced at the essay and she thought it was a letter that I was writing her. And she saw that paragraph about sexual satisfaction and all that. So she decided that I was trying to establish a relationship with her, and took it to the captain, and they came to the hospital and arrested me. And said that I was trying to establish a relationship with a staff member. And I was like, what? And so I had to go through policy, and we had to get the statement, the program statement that the director of the Department of Rehabilitation had issued, and I had to get the warden, and it was a thing where I had to get all of these policies that said that I wasn't trying to establish a relationship, but and then I had to get a letter from a professor saying that she generated this. They thought that I generated the letter on the internet, and I don't even have access to a computer. Oh my God, it was just crazy. But long story short was the policies are in place to protect both staff and inmate. And if you don't know how to read the policies or apply the policies or even know what the policies is, then you're subject to being um, disciplined. So the policies, there's you don't have to interpret, man. Like it is what it is, man. The policies are there, and they just there. Like you got to know. Again, I can't say it no plainer than other than know the game, man. Know the rules. If you don't know the rules of the game, don't play. The only way that inmates can effectively affect policy is if they stick together. Like they have to all be on the same page. If somebody deviates, and like we have to have a collective. It's like a union. Like we have to be unionized and organized, and we have to come at it as a collective. If you try to do it individually, you may win some battles, but you're not going to win the war. From a staff perspective, which is crazy because I used to work with staff and I see their perspective. And I remember saying to myself, I wish that I was at a staff meeting so I could hear how they think, because the man, everybody knows that people in power, they got these like the administration, let's just say administratives, right? On paper, everything looks like, yeah, we can do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this, and this is how it's going to be, rah. But when you get to the boots on the ground, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. So there was a lot of times where the administration would institute a policy, and the COs that are on the ground be like, this is not going to work. Like we can't. This is not going to work. This is not. It's just not going to work. It looks good on paper, but it's not feasible, and you can't apply it practically. And that was always a problem. I always saw that the COs were very frustrated with administration, and because we know that they're frustrated with administration, we know that they're not really going to enforce that policy because it's almost. I mean, they could, but it'll be more problems for them and for us, and it's just too much work. And they ain't trying to. Remember, I told you the COs, most COs is just trying to do their 8 and go home. That's it. They ain't really trying to do a bunch of work. I'm not saying that they're all lazy, but it's you're an adult daycare supervisor. That's what a prison CO is. He's an adult daycare supervisor. That's all they do. They're adult daycare supervisors, man. It's an adult daycare because these kids. I mean, because how many dudes have you met that they're babies, they're whining, they're crying about this? You got dudes that are bad, you got dudes that are good, you got dudes that just want to sleep all day, just want to eat all day. You know what I'm saying? Like the police ain't doing nothing but just sitting there watching. They sit there and just twiddle, work on their phone and do. So I had a CO that was doing her college courses while she was at work. She wasn't trying to do no work. She was just going to school. She had a job and she could do her college work while going to work. So, and that's what she did. Yeah, man. I knew another CO. She worked third shift, right? And she came in just like because there's nothing to do on third shift. She just come and make a round and go back and go to sleep. I know for an absolute fact that the warden of a prison can change the way that prison operates. If they're willing to be less anti-inmate and more pro human, like you know what I'm saying, like pro humanitarian. So when I was in Pollock, Louisiana, I was there for 4.5 years. It's the United States Penitentiary, Pollock. And it was probably one of the most violent prisons that I've ever been in. We were always on lockdown from somebody getting stabbed, staff getting stabbed, inmates getting stabbed, people getting beat up, get hurt. Like, it was just very violent. We were on lockdown 9 out of 12 months. We spent on lockdown for a full year. So when that last lockdown was over, we got a new warden, and he said that he was going to try something. And he brought this program called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People on the Inside. And it was based on a book by Stephen Covey, and it was talking about the 7 habits of highly successful people. No, take that back. 7 habits of highly effective people. It wasn't successful, it was effective. Because the book says that you can be an effective crook, right? Or an effective lawyer, but you can be highly effective at it. But at any rate, he brought this program in, and he said that he wanted to get 50 staff members to take this class and 50 inmates to take the class. And he got it. He got 50. We took the class separately, right? And each of us got a handbook. And we each read the book, and we went through this program. It was a 12-week program. And I promise you, it changed the dynamic of the way the prison worked. Because now we're learning how to be effective. We're learning how to communicate. We're learning how to understand each other. And like, just like applying the 7 habits. And I don't want to go into the 7 habits, but just know that if you've never read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I suggest you read it. It is life-changing. And it's funny, the word paradigm, I didn't even know what the word paradigm meant until I read that book. And it's just, people have different paradigms, which is basically like a set of glasses that you put on. It's like how you view things. How are you seeing things, and what frame of reference are you seeing them from? That's what paradigm is, because everybody has a different frame that they see things from. But when he did that, I watched our prison culture change, man. People were now being more respectful. We're communicating more because now we're trying to understand each other instead of just trying to dictate or dominate. And the staff that took it, now they're talking to us, and instead of reacting to us, they're responding to us. And it just changed the whole dynamic of the prison. And I was like, man, they need to put this in every prison. Every prison should probably do that, because it takes a closer look at the humanness of us and takes away all of that the dogmatic policy and procedures and rules and this and that. And it says that we can coexist in an environment that is uncomfortable for everybody. And yes, it can be dangerous, but we can coexist and we can be effective. And yeah, so that's where I'm at with that. All right. So for those of you that are in prison, I encourage you to be proactive. What I mean by that is plan your release. While you're in prison, don't just sit there. Don't just take advantage of, like, you don't have to do anything, or the system, because they're not going to force you to work. Take programs. Do as many programs as you can. I know there's waiting lists, but there's other things that you can do. You can do correspondence courses, and now they allow you to get college degrees in prison. Go to college. Do something, but plan your release. Plan for what you're going to do your first 5 days, what you're going to do your next 5 days, plan, have a plan, and execute that plan when you come out. Don't deviate from that plan. Make it flexible where you can make some adjustments, but also have a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, and plan E, because things change. But don't just be in there being passive. Be proactive about your release. Be proactive about your rehabilitation, because the prison don't care about you being rehabilitated or corrected. So be proactive. And for those of you that are on the outside, supporting someone that's on the inside, or knowing someone that's on the inside, I asked you to check on them. Make sure they are okay. If you're not heard from them in a while, call the prison. Ask them Like, what's going on? I haven't heard from them for a while. They will contact him and say, hey, you need to make a phone call. Or they will give him a phone call. Or they'll tell him, hey, maybe you should write somebody. And if they don't have the materials to write, they'll provide them the materials to write. But you have to advocate for them in there. You have to make sure that they are okay in there. Don't just don't let her, like my mom, she's like, no news is good news, because she knew I could survive in prison. But I always made sure that I contacted her, and but I always was in contact with somebody, and she would contact them and say, hey, have you heard from Ramon? And they'd be like, yeah, oh yeah. And she'd be like, okay. But don't just be out there and not taking care of, and please, 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 this is so important. Send them pictures. Pictures mean a lot. Prime example is I hadn't seen my grandfather in probably 20 years. My mom sent me a picture, and I didn't even know who this man was. I had no idea. I was like, who is this old dude? My mom said, that's your grandfather. And I said, what? He had aged so much. We don't get to see the aging process in prison. You're with somebody every day, you get to see the aging process, so you know who that person is. If we haven't seen them in years, and we look at a current picture of them, as opposed to what we remember when they left, we're not going to recognize them. So send pictures often so we can see the aging process and we can know who's who. You know I got to do it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the notification button. I don't know, man. It just, that kills me. It kills me. Anyways, remember, God loves you. So do I. Peace. One love.